Going to live stream the meeting. Looks like we're live streaming. Going to live stream the meeting.
Oh, and then you have to turn down the volume for your phone or wherever.
Ah, yeah, please excuse my technical incompetence here.
Not at all.
Right, and if you can just bear with me for a second while we finish the setup, then I will be in a far happier place. You know that thing when it's not quite working the way you expect it to? Right, so thanks, Lara. So if I tile that there, and where's the live stream gone? Sorry about this. It feels very far more relaxed than I was expecting it to be. No, I really can't find what I'm looking for at all.
Well, it's certainly streaming live, John, that's for sure.
Excellent. Yeah, I was getting that. Unfortunately, I seem to be unable to find the bit that I was looking for. So we will stick with it. So welcome. Welcome to Untitled Live. And yeah, it's very, I'm getting other bits of words coming through. So let's start again. Welcome to Untitled Live. It's great to have everybody along here, and for those of you who are new to Oneqi, Oneqi is a collaboration between lots of different Qigong teachers and practitioners. We're really interested in exploring commonalities and embracing differences because we all have different ways of working, and it's good to understand them and compare them. So today we're joined by Clara Apollo. Hi Clara.
Hello
Jeremy
there.
College, and Alessandro Ferrula. And yeah, you can find out about us. I'm John Miller, by the way, and you can find us. You can find out about us on the Oneqi register of teachers because we're all up there. So the subject for today is harmony. I can relax now. I've done the official bits. The subject for today is harmony, and for me, the thing that kicked the whole harmony thing off was Prince Charles's book on harmony. And in there, he asks questions about what does harmony look like within areas as diverse as education, healthcare, agriculture. And as a Qigong practitioner, you sort of go, hang on a sec, what does harmony mean to me? Because I'd never really considered it in those larger spheres. And what can we as Qigong practitioners do in order to create harmony, both internally and externally? So that's the question. What is harmony to us, and how can we work? How can we work internally with it? How can we work externally with it? So I'm just going to throw that open and let's see what happens.
Well, that is what you did, wasn't it? You mentioned the word harmony, and it was like, oh, I got some stuff that I could share about that. And then Jeremy said, yeah, I could. And Alexandra went, yeah, this is a really, I mean, for the overuse of the word juicy, but it is a very rich topic to go into. And it's so interesting that you brought it in via the angle of having read Prince Charles's book, John. Wow.
Well, yeah, that's another story elsewhere. We don't need to go there at the moment.
But that idea that there's harmony, looking at harmony in all different facets of society, you know, it's like, what is this about? You know, where do we find it? Where do we see it? And then, as you say, where is that within our own practice, within our own everyday life?
Yeah. Yeah, I think for me, one of the things that was really intriguing about it was the fact that when you look at the idea of harmony and you look at it on a really big scale, there's a piece there for me that sits with sort of some of the key concepts that sit within Qigong. And when we're working outside of our normal sort of Qigong practice or outside of our normal class, when we're talking to people from all kinds of different backgrounds, you know, what is that harmony piece? You know, so I guess what I'd like to ask is, what techniques do you use? What things do you consider around harmony when you're interacting outside of the sort of normal Qigong spaces?
It's interesting. I did what I always do when sort of posted one of these kind of questions, is to Google an answer. What else? and one of the comments I saw, it said, harmony helps people to deal with change. And I thought that's an interesting idea. And then, of course, I then drew one of your favorite comments, John, when you always say, people don't feel chi, they feel change. And so, when you do the basic exercises, what you're actually experiencing is the movement of an energy from high concentration to low concentration, or that kind of idea. You're not actually feeling a substance like something solid. You're feeling a movement and a change of a substance. And so I was thinking about that, and I was thinking, harmony helps people to deal with change. And I thought, yeah, I like that. I like that. And Qigong helps people to deal with change as well. I think, the two of them. So it kind of underscores the fact that Qigong, in essence, actually is harmony. So that's the sort of the starting point, is that, and I know that, you can do variations of Qigong where, you might learn how to walk on swords, or, press spears into your throat or something like that. Those are sort of the weird side shows that people sort of sometimes sort of see from, I don't know, the Shaolin school does all sort of weird things like that, and that doesn't look like a particularly harmonious practice, I don't think. There's always extremes and everything, aren't there? But yeah, for me, the idea that everything in Qigong is about bringing you back to harmony is probably the first starting point. And then we briefly talked yesterday about harmony, and about what about this up and coming call. And it was interesting when Clara, you were saying you had a particular practice for harmony. And I was just thinking just about everything if you do it right, should bring about harmony. I think that's ultimately the aim of what we're trying to do with our Qigong.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to sort of play devil's advocate on that one slightly, because one of the pieces that comes up fairly frequently, I find, is the idea of being comfortable with your practice, or not doing things that make you uncomfortable within Qigong. And I'd like to think that when you look at harmony, yeah, we are trying to make things harmonious within ourselves, but actually quite often what we experience is disharmony. And the practice should be able to actually go to those places. And I noticed that Ben's put a question up here about flow state, and it just made me reflect on that. Do we feel that we are always harmonious in our practice? Do we feel that that's the aim? How do we feel about that one?
I think that, or I feel, or that I sense that the very center of us is a deeply harmonious space, and that all the experiences that we have and all the difficulties or whatever that comes on like layers to cover up this harmony. And so it's an unwinding to get back to it. I think it's always part of us, as a universal sort of directive to come into balance. And I think this sort of feeling that harmony is a more expanded version of balance, which tends to evolve the yin yang, the up down, the in out, the light dark. Well, the harmonious aspect is to incorporating all the elements. And I'm not just talking about the earth, fire, water, metal, wood, air. It's all the elements of your life. I mean, how to let them come into into the harmony that's at the center, wanting it to be. It's like that. I think that's one of the pulls. I think we have a place in us that is calling in the harmony, calling back the harmony, that I think we resonate with it. There's also a piece around sound as well, and harmonics. When we get the harmonics right within the scale, we get a beautiful sound. Well, can we get that harmony within our different elements of life? When we get the chords right with the different aspects of our life, then that gives us brings us back to our harmonious heartbeat. So that's my thoughts of. I think it's always there, and we are being drawn back to it. Hence why, as Jeremy was saying, all practices lead to harmony. But
just to add to that, I agree. I think our natural state is harmony. And I know when I started Qigong, I didn't come for health reasons, but I soon noticed a lot of imbalances, which I never realized I had. So it was kind of awakening things that were out of harmony, which actually was the casual state. And I think in our casual state, often we don't even notice the disharmony, because the mind is quite busy, active. And I notice what I put in my notes when I was reflecting on this is, when I'm in nature, it just reminds me so much of how, the earth is always there supporting us. That, I look at trees and I think, look at that amazing harmony, how it reaches up into the sky, into the earth. And as humans, that's our natural state. But often the heavy element or the thoughts are all up here. We're not even aware of our feet often, literally ungrounded. And, when I'm in nature, even if I'm not practicing Qigong, it's such a great reminder that my natural state, our natural state as humans, is to be at peace and in harmony. And then when I do the practice, often I'm reminding myself of these very simple principles. Just sense the feet into the earth and know that there's always this energy that keeps us alive and brings us back to our natural state. Because often I think that the tricky thing is we think we're trying to get somewhere, but actually it's a reminder of who we are truly. And we know that with people who are quite disturbed when they go out in nature, children, they feel something different, and it does calm them down. And I remember my daughter, when she was a teenager, she said, let's go for a walk. She said, no, I hate going for walks. And we go for a walk and come back. She go, God, that was so nice. But the mind is saying, I hate going for walks. Do it. You're in nature. To me, that's also Qigong, this communing with the harmony that's always reflecting back to us as well.
Yeah, there's something in the language there. I was just thinking as you were talking there, Alessandra, about being at ease. And of course, then the flip side of that is dis-ease, disease. And so, when we're out of harmony, disharmony, it's exactly the same sort of thing, that, being... As you said, I've just lost the word you said. It's a shame. You had it absolutely perfectly about the state that we're in. What did you say? Do you remember? Common state, did you call it?
Oh, casual state. Okay.
Casual state. That's absolutely lovely, because casual exactly describes not practicing, essentially, just a casual approach to life. And I'm sure it's a Bruce Lee quote as well, isn't it? Casual practice gives you casual results, or something like that. And the casual state, yeah, I really like that. So that's something I shall instantly steal and start talking about the casual state.
And there's a great word. I don't know if you ever took this. It's like a chicken stock that you can buy in supermarkets, certainly in Hong Kong when I visited. And you just add boiling water to it. If you feel out of sorts, you just add boiling water. You drink this chicken stock, often with cordyceps, bakery, different things in it, ginseng. Anyway, and I remember reading the notes, and it says this is for postnatal parturition, weakness in 4 limbs, obliviousness. So maybe obliviousness is the disharmony. I just love that word. How are you feeling? A bit oblivious. Okay.
Love it.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. I think I'd just like to say quickly at this point, one of the things that is really valuable within Oneqi when we get together and have these conversations is that we do steal stuff from each other. We do learn stuff from each other. And it's only by having these conversations that it's possible to actually sort of cross-pollinate between different styles of Qigong. And so it's just wonderful to be in this space and enjoy this type of learning. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I was kind of balking at the word steal, but I know that I know you don't meaning it playfully as well, but it is this cross-pollination of wanting to share what's the wisdom that we have, and then seeing how that connects and weaves with others, and that we've all got pieces of the jigsaw puzzle. So for me, it's like a potpourri of qigong considerations and wisdom that we've all got different parts of that can help to expand not only our experience of it, but also how we then share moving on. So yeah, if we pick up natty little quotes from one another, then that's all well and good, isn't it?
I have a nice little quote, and it was part of my Googling into harmony, and it exactly echoes what you said, because a part of the sort of it was part of, you know, how harmony is represented in Chinese culture, and it said, you know, it allows us to share various differences without showing disagreement. And so, and I suddenly thought, wow, that's nice, because that actually sums up Oneqi almost immediately as well, you know, because opening up a space, as we have done, to allow for different schools to discuss the sort of commonalities is a harmonious idea.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a key thing within Oneqi. It's, yeah, one of the reasons that I think that this is a conversation that can just keep on growing is that it sits at the core of everything that we do here. So
the question that lies behind that, sorry, Clara, I was just going to say, is this idea of, from a society aspect, sharing different ideas without showing disagreement, to an internal alchemy, for want of a better word, an internal qi conversation about sharing, you know, differences internally without disagreement. And that's the sort of the, you know, so maybe it sort of, you know, begs a conversation about the kind of different voices that we have inside us and the different emotions that we have inside us and how we bring those to a harmonious place, perhaps. Should I because I've started that, should I carry on?
It's bringing it back to the harmonious place. If the harmonious place is a default at the center of us, then it's what's in the way of that. So as Alexandra was saying, it's not a journey. We're not trying to get somewhere else. We're actually already there, but the stuff in the way, or there's obliviousness out the way, we're just not even engaging. And I'm going to have one of the things that also happens in Oneqi is that we do have discussions that can be challenging. I know that John often instigates those because he loves them. So it's not like we're pussyfooting around each other. Let's be frank here. And there are some schools of thought that think that if you are too sort of diffuse with the way you're getting your information in, if you're going into too many different places, then your own practice becomes a bit scattered. But my feeling is that if your practice is solid and true and you know where this place is inside of you, or you're beckoned back to it, or you're drawing in, ultimately what you're doing when you're broadening out and sharing and gaining in information from other teachers and other schools of thought, you bring it back to that internal compass inside of you. Does this make sense to me? Does this settle with me? Because if it doesn't, I'll let it go with love and grace. Thank you. That was just not right for me, that bit, but it might be right for someone else. But there's always this coming into this discernment point. And I wonder if that's connected with harmony. Is this helping my internal harmonics here? Or is it a discord and not for me at this time? Don't know. What do you think about that?
That's that opens up a whole load of stuff for me. And I'm going to sort of throw a couple of things in, and then I know that Jeremy wants to sort of bring stuff in. Within the practice that I have, which is actually the same practice as Jeremy as well, there's an idea about aspects of self. And one of the things about aspects of self is that we look at what is our self-image, what is our secondhand information, what are the ideas that we live by. And there's almost this implication that we need to just get rid of them in order to discover harmony. And I don't think that's true at all. I think what we need to do is we need to recognize this stuff. And it comes back to this idea of being able to hear different things and being able to recognize it for what it is. And in that recognition, we can actually gain a better perspective on what we do. But, you know, this is a very different process to just being an information store where you just want to read the next book or learn the next practice or go to the next course. This isn't the same thing. What we're looking at is what practices can we do that actually highlight what our information is, what things we're holding on to, how, you know, what the harmonious state is in any given time for us, and how that can then change and evolve as we allow other things to move through. So Yeah, but I'm coming from the place of I as you've already pointed out, Clara, I quite like exploring disharmony. I quite like exploring discomfort, because I find great learning there. Because if I can find those places that are uncomfortable, I find the things that I'm holding on to and I need to let go of.
Yes. Yes, indeed. Exactly. And it was like horses for courses. It's what is suiting you, what works for you. And yes, there is a soothing aspect to Qigong. Let's be honest as well. There are times in your life when you're anxious, fearful, it's not easy, and there are soothing ways of working with your breath or gentle rocking movements, but then it depends what you're getting into. Where that then leads you to is like, well, what is this discomfort then? How can I bring my compassion in here, and where is the edge of that, and what am I being shown? And it's, yeah, like you say, if you go to those places that aren't so easy, but you're in a, that you're safely held by your system and your connection to the Tao of all it is, and or whatever name you want to call the great divine spirit of all. But you've given yourself time. And I think when we come into our Qigong practice, like any personal practice of an energetic quality, when you give yourself to yourself, this is a big piece of information. It's like, oh, I'm worth it. I'm worth giving me to me. We give out so much, don't we? We're busy doing, and like you're saying, with all this secondhand information coming in. But when I give myself to myself, something happens. There's an honoring and a compassion for my humanity, and consideration of becoming like almost like a parent for myself. Like, what is it I need right now? And sometimes I need to be soothed. Sometimes I need to have my butt kicked. It's like, what is actually required here? So we've got all these elements of self, haven't we, that are rolling around in there. We have to get them to play nicely. How do we harmonize these different aspects of the self, get them to do deals with one another? That's what I say. Like,
of course, that would be the approach that comes from parts therapy, if you've ever come across that before. It's a sort of a branch of hypnosis which puts you into a deep stance, a deep trance, and then the therapist starts to negotiate between different personalities, so that which part of your personality wants to smoke, which part wants to stop, and comes and strikes a deal. But for me, I think there's there's more to it than that, and as John sort of hinted at, it's part and parcel of the sort of the work that we do quite a bit, and it is that sort of looking at what you've talked about, Clara, as well, which is looking at the structures that have covered the harmonious you, and so whilst I think that what happens is that we can look at Qigong from two perspectives, certainly from the kind of the thinking that our school works with, which is there's very much the sort of the physical path into it, and if you start working into the physical path, you're going to heal things, you're definitely going to fix problems within your body, you're going to open up joints so chi flows better, you're going to store energy and all that sort of stuff. But there's also the sort of the, if you like, broadly speaking, sort of Chinese psychology side of things, which allows you just to do a bit sort of deeper questioning and find out, who am I? What is all this nonsense that goes on in my head? Why did I get sick in the first place? And then, when you start to look at those patternings, which are just wrinkles in the flow of chi anyway, it's just, and it was interesting when you brought up, Clara, for me, the thoughts about harmony. I was just thinking about harmonics. I was thinking exactly about that, the way that sound work can work directly on the body, because ultimately when we start to look at things, like sort of quantum physics or whatever, we discover that everything is just vibration anyway. So yeah, I wasn't sure I was going with that, but that's just a point, apparently.
You just mentioned sound, one of my favorite topics. And when you bring sound into Qigong movement, you can really embody stuff when you bring the sound in, healing sounds or even random sounds, but the healing sounds that resonate with the different organs that you have, and just letting your voice be part of your embodiment process of the movements and the harmonics that want to be. And I did see there was part of a program on the other week called Superpower, where they had their, I think it was Dr. John, I can't remember, I should have looked that up and put that down. But anyway, he was the guy that is investigating cymatics and where you have that the sand on the piece of board, and you put the vibration different, and it creates patterns on it. That one, and he was kind of wanting to take it further than that, and then built some fantastic sort of contraption that had this sort of little petri dish in the middle with some water in it, and he had the sound frequencies going to the water. And yes, you guessed it, the water then produced the most incredible mandalas of patterning and geometry when different, and he stuck his finger in going like, this really is happening. The finger sort of made it all go distorted, and then the sound came back in, different sound frequencies, creating this sort of sacred geometry within. And it's like this patterning of sound within us is so deeply healing and resonates with us at such a level that we get it in ways that we're only just starting to comprehend. And he was saying that what it needs is a membrane. The sound needs a membrane to produce these geometric patterns. And if you think of it, every single one of our cells has got a cell membrane. And water, it's like, so you could picture that you are then surrounding every one of your cells with this beautiful geometry of sound, and how deeply healing and harmonizing is that for your system. And I was just blown away and thought, I want to know more about this, because isn't it great when science catches up with what it is we feel and sense? It's like, oh, fabulous.
I mean, just very briefly, I saw an article in the New Scientist about 25 years ago, and they'd essentially taken a photograph into a guru's vein and of his red platelets, and they were in nice little sort of clumps flowing through the veins. And then they asked him to chant Om 40 times and took the same photograph again, and every platelet had separated out, and you could see just by the look of the photo, the quality of it was much better, that it was much more free flowing. And that was just him saying Om 40 times, So yeah, there's an awful lot to be said to it. So I'm guessing that you guys use sound work quite a bit as well.
I do, yes.
Alessandro, you use sound work in your...
Yeah, actually, I notice in my practice when I'm releasing, generally doing my own practice, often they're not very pretty sounds come out, but that's a kind of release. And I know, as they get deeper and more harmonious, and then maybe even quieter, then, I'm getting more in balance, more in harmony. And I'll never forget when my teacher came to this country, the classes were very quiet because English people don't express that much, as we know. And I remember him saying, it's quite good if you express sound. So then it became quite noisy, and it became so noisy, people were just making sound for the sake of it. And then I remember him saying one day, actually a higher level of practice is to internalize the sound, and then it became quieter again. And it was so funny. It was like a zoo. I tell you, it was really horrendous. Like 60 people in Fulham Library, in a room squashed together. Anyway, thank God, then it became quieter. But actually, maybe you can add to this. When we internalize the sound, it's kind of quite powerful that there's an internal effect, and the harmony internally brings us more to balance as well.
Definitely. Yeah, I've had experience of that, where you make the sound first and you get the vibe of it, and then you don't sound it anymore, but you're imagining the sound, and something else happens that is much more subtle. But maybe that's the internal harmonics really switching in then. So anyone that's watching or listening would love to know if you've got experience of any of this sound healing or chi wisdom coming through. Drop us comments. We'd love to be in conversation with you.
And the other thing that struck me, I heard once that very advanced qigong teachers in China, they go to practice in the marketplace, in the noisiest place they can find. And when we are in harmony, or they, when we can be in harmony, we're not disturbed by things as much. And that's one of the most amazing things I think about qigong. And often I'm with people and we'll be walking past a school, and I think, oh, how nice the sound of those children. And this person next to me goes, God, I hate that sound of the children. And it's like, what? and it's so interesting. There's obviously something, emotionally or inside that the world around us affects. And what I've noticed, and so grateful for qigong, especially during the pandemic, is when I'm in harmony and I have my own practice and work on myself, things just don't bother me in the way that I would expect. And that's like an incredible kind of benefit of Qigong, that when we are in harmony, we're not bothered by things around us as much. I'm sure you've all noticed that.
Yeah, this feels so much like a really core piece. And I mean, there's stories. One of the teachers that we work with is quite well known for taking groups of people into train stations in China or into building sites and getting them to sit and meditate in those spaces, because there is something there. I remember a few years back, I was having a conversation with, it was an organization in London that had offices in New York, and the guy who was running the London office was completely anti-mindfulness. And he was saying, what's the point of it? He said, the New York office, they've now created a room that's completely silent, that's full of like all the comfortable things that take people into this beautifully silent space, so they can go and they can experience mindfulness and experience meditation at any point during the day. But it doesn't help them, because all that happens is that as soon as, excuse my language, but as soon as the shit hits the fan, everyone just piles into this office and sits there and does nothing. Like, but that's exactly what you're saying, isn't it? The training that we do should enable us to actually welcome everything that comes in and have a harmonious response to it. And that, I think, is the bit that I'm really interested in exploring, because there's this idea of what is internal harmony and what is external harmony. And I don't know what others here feel, but my feeling is that the only thing I have control over is my responses and the way that I am. I can't control harmony externally, but I can have an influence over it with the way that I perceive it and the way that I deal with it.
Well, I'm going to suddenly wrap up about half a dozen points in a very beautiful envelope, John.
Oh, Jeremy.
At least that's how it feels now. But when we get to the end of it, I'll also be driveling away, no doubt. But I was going to draw it back to what Ben had said earlier about that moment, that still point in one's practice. And I was just thinking there about sort of T.S. Eliot, the still point at the turning of the world. And Ben had mentioned the zone. And certainly, it's not necessarily something that we seek out in Qigong, but the more you practice with it, the more you find that it starts to occur. That sometimes you find yourself, I mean, it's less obvious in a sort of a teaching state, but it's more obvious in my sort of personal practice, that I'll be sort of running through a set of exercises, and I'll suddenly get in some ridiculously impractical pose of some sort with my arms stretched out, and everything starts to slow into this very, very sort of still point, and I'll sort of think, ooh, here we are, wow, this is it. And time stops and everything stops. And as you say, that kind of relationship to sound and so forth is really interesting, because a while back I had a wonderful classroom, which was the most Zen space. And right next door to it, they started building a whole new block of flats. And so regularly during our class, our still gentle class, there'd be somebody next door with a jackhammer, blah, 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 blah. And actually, in fact, I was thinking about another space as well. And one of the times they actually came through a wall, and a brick fell out of a wall into the classroom. So one of the things that I used to sort of say to my students, just remember that the noise you're hearing, they're not doing that to you. And that was a very interesting point for people to try and get their heads around, because immediately you hear sort of someone popping a car horn, or you hear a jackhammer going off, and you think, bloody hell, the person's trying to disturb my peace. But then you realize that it is just a noise, and there's no difference between the barking of a dog and the cooing of a pigeon. I suppose a gentle coo of a dove might be just as irritating if you're in a completely quiet space, but it depends on how you react to it. And I suppose the relationship I was just trying to draw there between this ability to find this still point within us, which has gone beyond the sort of the outward, and it reflects exactly what you're saying about practicing in train stations and things like that, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to quickly interrupt there because we've had a couple of things come up in the chat, and I've sort of tried to sneak them in, but I haven't been particularly explicit about it. So thank you. So thank you, Ben, for putting stuff in there. And he's asked, John, as you like to explore disharmony, what would you consider aspects that foster disharmony in Qigong practice? And so, yeah, to me, there is one practice that is all about disharmony. And the practice is Chenbi, which is standing with feet together and the arms out. And this in itself isn't a difficult practice to do, but after you've been standing for 40 minutes, you can really experience your disharmony. And actually,
well, I think maybe 15 minutes is probably there, John.
And so maybe 2 or 3 minutes, different people, different practice.
Yeah.
But quite a lot of the time when we allow ourselves to actually go deeper into the practice, what we do is we have that deeper exploration, and we experience the discomforts. And to me, it's always about questions. So yeah, have people got favorite practices that feel as if they sort of expose those things to them?
I think sometimes, in my experience, I can confront something to kind of go through it, and other times the energy or the chi kind of creates space whereby the discomfort can dissolve, and often I'm surprised by that. So I don't kind of choose and think, right, I'm going to go into this area of discomfort around the liver. I'm really go deep into it. Often, in my practice at least, it's more about creating the space, keeping the connection, and allowing the energy or the chi to kind of dissolve and flow through. So, but I know often people do like to confront it, and I think that probably in martial arts that's more of a kind of a path, but I'm not sure what the others think of that.
Yeah, certainly from my perspective, for many years before coming to Zheneng Qigong, I studied medical Qigong, and within that they actually classify exercises as being disruptive. And so there's one that I still love to play with, which is called Trembling Horse, where if you've ever seen a horse, where they sort of do that weird thing and then they sort of tremble all the way down their body and then their legs kick out at the back and they sort of go, and there's a sort of a variant of that where you start by shaking your hands all the way up to your shoulders, then you shake your whole body and let it all sort of shiver all the way down you and breathe out very sort of strongly. But it's actually designed there to disrupt. And so, on a kind of like a physical basis, that's very much a kind of like and then that's, the idea within a set is to set up your first kind of very disruptive exercises, which literally shake up the flow of chi in your body, and then put in a block of exercises in the middle, to use the American tone, which I don't particularly approve of, tonifying, to tonify your organs. Then at the end there's a sort of a regathering and rebuilding. But within that structure, there's definitely ones that are geared to upset you. They do as well.
Yeah, it's interesting that you use the word disruption, because I hadn't actually thought of it like that. And that the shaking I find so useful to kind of help us land in the present moment, to become so like engrossed with the shaking going on. And sometimes the shake will begin from just standing, and the shake almost seems like it's coming from the earth, and you just kind of, it'll come up and then the body responds. And I always felt it was like an ironing out of the stagnation.
Yeah, working through.
Yeah, I'd never thought of it as actually it's a disruption, but it's a disruption of the stagnation patterns.
Yeah.
So it's bringing in a recess, like shake it all up. It's like shaking up the bottle of mud, isn't it? And when you let it stand, it then all drops back down to a new configuration. And so that's really interesting that we have different words to explain this or to look at this. And here we are, we've just shared something else that's common to us all from different perspectives and broadened my perception of it. So thank you.
Mm-hmm. I think I'd like to say that I've just listened to everybody else talking here and I'm going, everybody else's classes sound so much nicer than mine.
What happens in yours then, John? What do you make everybody do? Stand it up.
You've got to
pushing the mountain
before we start. No, I don't. but that thing about disruption, I think, is really important. And I think that in order to understand harmony, it's that yin yang thing, isn't it? In order to understand harmony, we need to understand disharmony.
Yes.
So
yeah, the shaking is quite interesting. I always do it as one of the starting practices, and I read that animals shake always when they have trauma, and children shake, but adults don't. We hold it in. And I remember recently I was talking to a woman, we were having an online session, and she said when she tells her kids off, they shake, and she asked them, why are you shaking? And they said, because you're telling us off. So children kind of spontaneously,
move it all
it's
on.
kind of, it's disruptive energy being taken in, but
and
they're
it's
immediately
natural.
clearing it. Whereas as adults, we tend to hold it in and then need therapy for many years,
Do you think it's part of the whole Britishness as well? Hold it all in. I feel like I want to shake, but that would be weird.
I do. Look, I'm Italian, so I know. Just for example, with alcohol, in Italy, people can drink any time. There's no rules, and as a result, they allow emotions out more easily because of alcohol, but because something like that's quite relaxed. Whereas over here, as we know, when people drink too much, a lot comes out that isn't expressed in the day, if I can put it nicely.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, as an Italian, because when people drink in Italy, there isn't such a big change, whereas here, it's almost like they're waiting to drink to release. And then that's quite disruptive in the way that that energy is released can be.
Yeah, sort of needing a drug to be able to give yourself permission to express what wants to come through you. And I remember I used to go clubbing back in the day, and all my friends were doing MDMA, I think it was called ecstasy back then, and I didn't, because I got off on the music. I was just, I couldn't go for as many hours as they did, but I was like, the music's doing it for me, the movement's doing it for me. And I realized that how lucky I was that I didn't need to use something to help me get into that state, just needed some good music on. And I think that thing about movement as well, hence why I don't know what's going to happen now regarding sort of dancing, and maybe it's going to be more of it outside. But when you do get the body moving and shaking, like you say, then the mind can kind of open and clear, and sounds can come through. Or, often in classes, I'm sure like you do, you suggest to people to sort of journal after their practice. What came up for you then? What needs to be expressed? What's ready to come out? And because that's the thing, if we've got all this pressure of holding on to difficult emotions, the body's not supposed to hold on. The body's there to process and to bring us back to this harmonic piece that's at our center. So it is giving permission to move and also be still, and having the interplay between the two, and with the emphasis on the word play, interplay, so it's not too strict.
I'd like to pull you up on one thing there, Alessandro, when you said that adults hold it all inside, then they need years and years of therapy. Well, they just need a couple of Qigong lessons, that's all.
Yes. True. No, I was going to say, or come to Qigong, of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah, like that. There was another piece there that was interesting for me, which was about the cultural differences.
Yes.
And I think that if we look at it, then I think harmony in different cultural surroundings is different. And is there sort of a state of harmony that transcends cultural difference? Cool, I'll just let that one sit, just have one of those tumbleweed moments.
Yes.
Okay, moving on.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I like that as an idea, John. I think, yes, there is harmony that transcends cultural difference. I think that, what we're talking about, when you talk about cultural difference, you're talking about the social structure that binds us. But, we can find our way. For instance, you and I have both practiced in China, and I guess the other guys, but it's that, life couldn't be more different. But in a practice room in China, everything is completely, all of that falls away. I feel that, yeah, it's something like, wow, now all we need to do is to introduce this to the United Nations. Qigong to stop all war. I mean, honestly, I'm there,
Yes, me too.
I believe it. But yeah, no, I think you're right. I think there is that. And I was going to make another side point before you drop that extraordinary question there, John. I was going to make the observation that you started off by talking about harmony because of Prince Charles's book and talking about agriculture and things like that. And I was going to observe the center that Dr. Pang, who's the founder of Offstyle, had. In it, they had research work, which they did an awful lot of research about agriculture, about materials and metals. You know, they discovered that if you sent chi to concrete, you could increase it by 30%. But one of the interesting things was that they did crop yields on one particular type of rice, and just sending chi to the seeds and then planting the seeds, you could then increase the crop yield of one particular type of rice, I remember, by nearly 42%. And that's kind of harmony in farming. And there's something very kind of like that I really like about that as an idea. I like the idea that, yeah, we can talk about harmony across societies, but we can also talk about embracing nature in that way as well.
Yeah, it kind of comes back to one of the things that Alessandra was saying right at the beginning about this whole piece about getting involved in nature and understanding what nature is. And there's something very harmonious in that space, which, you know, with the techniques that we learn through Qigong, we can start to understand what these harmonious relationships actually feel like. I don't know whether we can, you know, I'm not sure. Well, I'd like to think that you can go all the way and you can understand the purest nature of harmony, but that may take a little while. That's more than just a weekend course, isn't it?
Do we need to understand it intellectually, or do we just let ourselves drop into the fact that it's part of who we are? And I'd like to just follow up on what Jeremy was saying about that focus. You know, we know the observer affects the field, so whatever you think has an effect. So when you're in a harmonious chi-ful state, this is a great time to imagine the best for the world, or send energy to someone you know who needs healing, or to your crops, or to your library, or, you know, not underestimating the power of your own state. When you drop into that pure state of being, you might only get little moments of glimmers of it, but as you were saying, you know, in the middle of practice, there'll just be that moment of still points. Oh, we're there. But to breathe that and be that and own it, yeah, for yourself, but also know that you're affecting the field. That's sort of resonating out of you, isn't it, as well, in a harmony, bringing hopefully more harmony to the world. I mean, how far does that go? I mean, I don't know, but
yeah, it made me question or think about mobile phones. You know, can you be harmonious on a mobile phone? You know, and how far away has technology like that come from nature? So is the question here, the further you move from nature towards, you know, sort of radical science or whatever, you know, is that what disharmony actually looks like?
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking, going back to true nature, if we go out for a walk during the pandemic, I remember going to Richmond Park and I saw this incredible oak tree, and 80% of it was dead. It was kind of burnt, you know, it obviously had been in a lightning strike. And 20% was this vibrant oak leaning on the dead part, you know. And it was just, and the pandemic was going on, people were dying all over the world, and I was just observing nature in front of me, and it was such a moment of kind of realization, you know, life, death are so close together. You know, we're here for only a few moments, and you know, what can we do to actually stay present, stay inspired, stay in harmony? And for me personally, something like observing that just brought me such peace, you know, and then an appreciation for life, and therefore actually doing more practice to kind of stay in a kind of harmonious state. Because when I see it in nature, and how life and death are so close, and I could be gone tomorrow, as everybody was, you know, when we were right in it, nobody knew what was going on. At least, thank God, now we're kind of heading out. But I remember just observing that tree. I even took a video of it, and when I watch it, I think, really? Is that how can life survive on 80% death? But actually, even in Qigong, I've seen people very close to leaving us in this world, and Qigong turned their whole life around. So I think it's a great thing to remind everybody, you know, and be aware that it's such a magical practice, no matter where we're coming from.
Yeah, it makes me reflect on. We tend to view, okay, if we're talking about harmony, our frame of reference is as fellow human beings. and we tend to view harmony from the perspective of us as humans, which means that we've already created a colouring of it. We've already sort of missed the point somehow by viewing it from the human perspective, because harmony goes beyond the human perspective. When you talk about harmony in nature, when you talk about harmony in that situation with the tree, harmony is just harmony. It's not human harmony. It's bigger. And I think, to me, this is one of the pieces that sits at the core of the practice. I'm always drawn back to as Jeremy knows, I bang on about this hugely, the concept of Wuji and the empty circle. And the idea that in that space, I remember when I was first introduced to it, it was described as the void or empty. And yet the more you practice, the more you realize that that space inside the circle is unlimited potential. Nothing has happened in it. Humans haven't happened in it. You know, there's no division of right or wrong. There is just the potential for anything to happen. And I can't think of a better image to describe harmony than Wuji, than just unlimited potential. Anything can come to pass. You know, forest fires happen, but when forest fires happen, new growth appears. We start again. All of that sort of exists, and this all weirdly feels harmonious when you look at it from that perspective. But as a human, sorry, Clara, I will stop in a second. But as a human, we get caught up in all kinds of human judgments, and I think that this is one of the things that we can find with Qigong. We can actually recognize our perspectives. I'm going to chuck the ball to Clara.
Yay! So. It was about the Wuji, that's Ji, not Chi, the Wuji, the G piece. So I was on a call with Juling Al Huang, who wrote the Embrace Tiger Return to the Mountain. Well, it was a transcript of a lot of his work. You may have heard of him. Fantastic fellow, really beautiful. And he had all this calligraphy up around, and he was telling us stories about it all. And we were doing the movements to dance as well. He's like a Tai Chi dancer, really. That was all Qigong and calligraphy. But he was talking about this G piece, this center of everything in the Dantian, this void place. He said, but it's not. It's actually the place that all the directions meet in. It's all the forwards and back, the up and down, everything from, it's the center point of balance with all these different, and I just thought that's the harmonic piece. That's the place, as you say, there's the center of peace and the void of all possibilities. But within that is a harmony, because there's potential there for what wants to happen next. So it kind of has to be harmonious in there, because any kind of discord tends to happen outside of that sacred zone, really. So it's that thing about, if something looks like it's empty, have a feel. Is it really? Or what's going on? It's the center point of harmony.
Yeah, the still point at the turning of the world again.
Yes, yes. And it's in the center of each and every one of you. We have this potential to turn on this pivot inside of us. Like you're saying, Alessandra, the person that was getting towards the end of their life got into the Qigong practice and was able to gain more health because of this way of working. And there are people also that have taken their Qigong to help them pass over the bridge into the altered state of otherness, dropping your physical body. So there's, in fact, this is a discussion that could continue and probably will, around, the different states of consciousness, the multidimensional existence and all of that. But we're here and now with bodies. We're alongside our animal friends, our plant friends, and all the elements around. As you said, there's a harmonic directive in nature that is central to it all. And that's what keeps pulling us back in. And that's why I have great hope for what's happening now. This is a big pivot point, and the potential to shift and change to what really could happen is getting stronger by the day, in my humble opinion.
Yeah, I think I'd have to agree with you. And I think it comes back to the idea of sometimes you need to experience disharmony. Sometimes you need things to shake up, so that you can see what they are. We're very good at getting stuck in what we perceive to be harmony, which is just quite often it's just repeating the same things over and over and over again. And that is harmoniously making sure that nothing ever changes.
Yeah.
and there's a harmony in that, but that isn't the type of harmony that that you know, well, certainly speaking for myself, that's not the harmony that I'm interested in. I'm interested in the bigger idea of it.
The dynamic harmony.
That's a stagnant harmony, isn't it? It's kind of stuck somewhere.
Stagnant harmony or dynamic harmony. And we have to remember that within all our Qigong practice is that repetition piece. And every time you're doing the movements again, every time you take another breath, it's always slightly different. There's a subtle difference. You might think you're doing the same move over and over again. Like, not ever quite the same, is it? And that's what makes it fascinating and absorbing in the now moment, to stick with it and be present and just be open for what wants to be shown to you, the wisdom of your soul coming through, and this quintessential peace at your center that is always there. As I say, that's what's so beautiful. There's such a great compassion when you get to that place inside of you, because it can be quite scary for some people. There's a fear. What happens? What am I going to meet here? And it can often be quite surprisingly kindly compassionate. It's like, okay, I'm not perfect. Show me somebody that is. You know, this isn't about perfection, is it?
No, no, absolutely not.
Harmonious.
I feel I'm just about to offer a mathematical equation of some sort now. I feel there must be a percentage to harmony. And the reason I say that is that I was just sort of thinking about it when you were talking about, you know, static harmony or you know, things in balance. And John, you remember I sometimes talk about this I've lost her name now, who's talking about, you know, the hairy biker with love on one knuckle and hate on the other knuckle, and how love is very much about stasis and hate brings about change. And I sort of thought, do I feel that's right? But the point I'm sort of thinking about at the moment is about the pendulum swing of our lives. And when the pendulum comes up to the highest point, it can be exceptionally uncomfortable, be it on the love or the hate side, and then the pendulum swings back to the other point, and that can be exceptionally uncomfortable. But there's a percentage of that sort of, you know, arc of that swing where we feel that we are, you know, that things are harmonious for us. And so whether it's moving in the direction of hate or moving in the direction of love, for a long period of that swing, it feels harmonious. And it's only when that goes beyond that it becomes out. And so I don't know, I suppose perhaps Qigong helps you to increase the percentage of harmony in your life.
or drop into the natural harmony that's always there. I think the mind wants to think, well, you know, I've got to do, actually it's always there. So Qigong for me helps me drop into it, and that's such a, in an effortless way, because so many practices you need so much effort. It just feels like Qigong in that respect is and that's why I think people love it so much, because it can be just letting go and resting in it, in this harmony that's always there.
And it's natural. And I'm just going to pick up just before we finish up, because we're going to have to go quite soon, that this pendulum thing, that's yin and yang. And we were speaking about the harmony being more about the elements. So this movement, this sort of infinity wheel, if you like, that forms the figure of 8, is sort of harmonizes the up, the down, the side, all those little the spectrum in between that you're speaking about. Where is that harmony? But that bit in the middle where you come to the center point, that it always goes through that place of balance, that you're touching it each time you go through, and it's part of the bigger wheel. You can't have the middle point without the outer points. You can't have that without it. It's all part of a bigger harmony, and as long as it all keeps moving and grooving, and the still points can be recognized, places of powering up, and not stasis. What's the difference between stillness and stasis? That's another conversation. But yeah, that the harmony will be drawing us back in. And I think that's kind of where we've got to with this conversation, that harmony is part of us all already. And it's just looking at how we can get in touch with it more, get rid of the layers of stuff that's on top of it.
Rubbish.
Excellent. Well, at that point, I would so like to go around and say, let's just have a final thought for everybody, but I'm really aware that we're sort of out of time pretty much. And so I'd just like to take a minute to wrap up, and then yeah, we will see where we go. So the first thing to say is thank you, everyone. Thank you, Clara. Thank you, Jeremy. Thank you, Alessandro. If you want to find out more about what we're doing on Oneqi, come and visit the website. And on that note, I'm going to do a cheeky little screen share so that you can have a look at the website and we can explain how you can join and what's going on. So this is the website. It's oneqi.org. If you want to become a member, if you want to be part of these conversations, if you're teaching Qigong, click on the members tab at the top here and it will tell you all about it. You can sign up. If you just want to be kept up to date with these conversations, if you want to find out what we're doing in Oneqi, as Oneqi grows, as the conversations change, as the projects evolve, go to the newsletter tab and fill in your details here and subscribe. And if you find there's great value in this, please feel free to donate. We're using the money in order to develop the website, in order to promote Qigong in the UK. And so please feel free to make donations if it feels appropriate. And then the other thing is, if you want to find out about who we are, click on the Teachers tab. And on the Teachers tab, you'll be able to find everybody who is currently a member. You can have your membership piece up here. You can go and search for people by location. You can find teachers nearby. So this is what Oneqi is about. And the final thing to say is, if you've enjoyed this, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. There's going to be loads more content like this, and there's all kinds of exciting projects coming up. So thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
take care.
Yeah.
Stay in harmony.
Stay in harmony. Yeah.
Stay in harmony, absolutely.